This is the Everton Byline, episode number 49. We are back, and we are back with good news because within around 45 minutes of Everton confirming Idrissa Gueye signed a new contract officially, we are here to chat about it. Joining me, as ever, is Paddy Boylan. Paddy, how are you?
I'm good. I quite like the fact that you immediately time-stamped when this episode is being recorded. I don't have to say it myself. I don't have to say this is recorded at 5:45 on Monday, the 7th of July. Normally we have to, don't we? Because particularly in transfer window season, things can quickly get overtaken.
Yeah, it does maybe ruin the magic a bit for people who watch this on YouTube, maybe a bit later on. But I'm just so used to doing it.
I always feel a bit bad because obviously it goes out as a live, and you can see people when it actually does go out live. You can see people responding and asking questions, and it must just look like we're blanking people. We're not. No. The show is already being recorded.
I feel like we need to put like one of those messages, like like on Saturday Night Television, where it's like, "Do not call after this time," or "This is a re-record and don't call." So
re-record,
yeah. If you are watching this on YouTube, we have recorded it already, but we do look at the live chat and the comments. Yeah. So thank you for sending them in. But yeah, I just thought I'd get the time in there just in case people think, God, these lads sound giddy today. It was 12 hours ago now. Why are they still so happy? But no, good news from Everton's perspective, which of course we will be talking about. Just a reminder before we get stuck in. Today's episode, we are sponsored by the Bridewell. You can see their logo in the top right-hand corner there for those of you who are watching on YouTube. The sun is going to be out all weekend, apparently, so it's going to be a great time to get out into town. Have a drink if you've not been into the city centre yet this summer. Just a reminder as well, the Denby is still doing that event with Derek Manfield on Friday. Looking forward to that. I'm going to be going down. Should be a great occasion. Those little afternoon dinners, not really dinners, afternoon lunches with the former players are fantastic. So well worth checking out and get down to one if you've not already. If you're watching us on YouTube, do leave us a comment. Do hit like, do hit subscribe. All these things helps. And if you listen to us on iTunes or on Spotify, you can leave us a rating and a review, which a lot of people have been doing more of recently. So thank you very much for doing that. Also, you can email us at evertonbyline@gmail.com. And this week, Paddy, I wanted to ask our listeners who are great at getting in touch and who are very creative with the squad number suggestions. Just to some podcasts, and they've got a really jazzy sort of intro music and that kind of thing. I was just listening to one the other day and thought, why don't we have one of them? Me and Paddy are hip happening lads who are very trendy and should have one of those. So if you're listening to this and you're good with music, if you'd like to make us a theme tune of some kind, it would be wonderful. If we've got, like I said, I know we've got some very creative people out there listening to us. So if you'd like to make us a theme tune, obviously something Everton related, it'll be great. And obviously we give full credit to everyone on the show going forward. But evertonbyline@gmail.com. If you've got any thoughts on that or anything you want to send, it would save me having to get Paddy to try and play the drums or the guitar or something to make one for us.
I was just about to say the best one can win a signed sweatband from you, Matt.
No one wants that. No one wants that. Maybe it could be like a signed team sheet from the. In fact, yeah, you can do that actually, unless you want to keep it for yourself. I might throw you under the bus here. The team sheet from the first game of Hill Dickinson Stadium. Would you be able to give that to a listener, or do you want to cherish it for yourself?
Well, you know what? I've still not given you. Have I given you your team sheet in?
No, you haven't actually. No, but do you know what? I've got to confess. I asked not that I didn't trust you, Paddy, but I asked somebody else to potentially get me one as well. So I have got one here. It's a team sheet from the last ever game. Yeah, the last ever game at Goodison Park against Southampton. So in fact, yeah, we can give that away then. That's what we can give away.
There you go.
But for someone who can do if you're up for doing a theme tune to start the show and you want a team sheet from the last ever game at Goodison Park, we can send it to you. If you want Paddy to sign it, you might do. We'll see.
No, nobody wants me to sign it.
There we go. This is what we do on the byline. This is just make up prizes on the hoof. Let's get into talking about some of the main topics this week then, mate. And like I said, within the hour of recording this, Idrissa Gueye's contract announcement was confirmed by Everton. I think now probably for about a week, 10 days, we've all kind of expected this to be coming. But it has also felt at times within this contract journey we've gone on with Idrissa. I won't necessarily call it a saga. Just reading between the lines, it feels like it maybe could have gone a different way. From your point of view, have Everton done well to kind of get to this point and wrestle it, maybe not necessarily wrestle it back, but convince him to stay? Or have you always kind of felt like him signing on was the direction of travel with this?
I think I've always felt as though he wanted to stay, and that was the most likely option. I think where it would have got tricky for Everton is if somebody had come to Idrissa and said, "Here's 2 years on an equivalent salary," particularly with Everton holding out for a lower amount. So I think where I'd give Everton credit is first of all in securing him. I think, as I wrote on The Athletic today, Monday, I think he was the most important of the out of contracts to retain, and probably by quite some distance, actually. Now I'm thinking about it, given what he brings in midfield and what the knock-on effect would have been, I think effectively you'd have been looking at having to rebuild a midfield without its main component. So that at the very least delays that the 1+1 scenario in the contract, at least the net delays that process a little bit longer, which for me is important. Where I'd also give Everton credit is that I think that they've pretty much stuck to their guns on the contract, in the sense that they've wanted one year maximum, one with an option, and that's where they've got to. It didn't get to 2 years, and therefore they'll feel they've achieved, they've done well in the negotiations. So I mean, this is a positive step. It's obviously taken a good period of time, because I think there has been an element of negotiation, an element of maybe brinksmanship here to see who was going to blink first. But it's quite clear, kind of reading his words in the official press release, which obviously went out under embargo at 5 o'clock today, that he loves the club and this is where he really wanted to be. So it kind of draws a line under all the out of contracts. Now we can look ahead to what actually needs to come. We've got that squad now, that squad, that cast iron squad, if you want to call it that, which I make to be about 16 strong, if you take out a few of the younger under 21 players. And they're going to need to obviously do a lot of business in the market now, and that's going to have to be the big main focus. So yeah, absolutely no complaints with this at all. Actually, I'm pretty much delighted that it all got sorted finally.
Yeah, like I think if Everton had ultimately gone and said, "There's 2 years, Idrissa, you're so important, we'll give you what you want." Like I think a few weeks ago we were talking about this. We both kind of said that, as much as we don't want to get into the habit of giving, big contracts like that to players who would be 38, I think I'm right in saying, by the end of them.
Yeah.
Also, I think we both sort of said, like, we'd appreciate that this summer where there is so much going on, that keeping such a key player, maybe, you break the structure that one time. It just so happens to be the very first time, if you get what I mean. Like, so I think it's encouraging that in that sense that Everton have kind of, like you said, have sort of gone into this and they've done a bit of brinkmanship, and they've been able to sort of get what they wanted as well. I think it sets a sort of good positive tone in regards to the negotiations as well. And I think like what I sort of wanted to talk about today, obviously we've spoken about Idrissa a fair bit over the last few weeks, and how important he is to the team and all that kind of thing. But I think now it sort of raises an interesting question about the rest of the midfield and kind of where everything go from here, because as much as getting him signed, I think, was obviously really important to Everton in the here and now and kind of piecing that midfield together. You still take a step back and look at it and think, you've got a lad there who was performing excellently last season, obviously our best player, supporters player of the year, players player of the year, tackles, interception, stats off the charts. We all know that. But I think we all also understand that when player gets to that age, that decline can come, and it can come out of nowhere. And then, apart from him, if you're counting Alcaraz as an attacking midfielder, which I think he is, I think if you're counting Harrison Armstrong as an attacking midfielder, which I think he probably is at this point, certainly under under Moyes. I don't know if you play necessarily as one of those two orthodox central midfielders. You've got James Garner, who came into the team pretty much a regular feature last season, to be fair. You've got Tim Rabunum as well, who is still, quite new to the football club, still don't quite know what he's all about. So had two pretty serious injuries last year. So effectively, you've got three lads there who've got, in very different ways, have got question marks around all of them. And then even if there was no question marks around any of them, and they were all, excellent players you could depend on, three centre midfielders isn't enough, is it really, for an entire campaign? So I don't know. I do kind of look at it and think this is great, big relief. We've signed our best player from last year for a year, maybe 2 years. Fantastic. If he carries on performing at that level, then fantastic. But I do kind of look at the midfield as well and think, I hope now they don't. I'm sure they're not going to do this, but I hope there's not people at the club who now go, big deep breath, Gana Gueye's here to piece this whole thing together for next season. We're boxed up in there, because I still think it's an area I'd look at and say they probably need one, if not two.
I mean, they absolutely need a succession plan. And that's not the only thing, in my opinion, that needs to happen in the centre of the park. But with regards to a succession plan, the best run clubs, the ones that do kind of 3 or 4 signings every summer, because there's not a huge amount of churn. I'm thinking there are Brighton and clubs of that ilk. They tend to get the successor in probably 12 months early, sometimes 24 months early, and then they'll send them out to a club in the Belgian league or somewhere else in Europe. Now, I think that's going to be challenging for Everton this time, because there is so much to do elsewhere. But one of the big questions they're going to have to ask this summer is, how much faith do they place in James Garner? How much faith do they place in Tim Rabunum? I mean, do they think something happens to one of the two starting midfielders that they can get by with Rabunum as kind of the next in line? I mean, I would be quite reticent there. I'd be quite hesitant to make that assumption based on what we've seen from it. I think we've seen some really good bits, but I think we've also seen elements of naivety and kind of room for growth in his play. So with the Gana Gueye situation, him turning 36 in September, and with Rabunum, I think you make the argument that they need minimum 1, probably 2 this summer. Like you, I think Alcaraz is an attacking midfielder, as he's told us. That's his preferred position, who can play deep if needs be, but certainly not a sitting midfielder. Harrison Armstrong played in a central midfield too for Derby, but I wonder with Moyes whether he'll look at him to play slightly further up the pitch. And then actually the resources are really quite scant after that. So yeah, but for me, I would still be looking at central midfield. It might not be the number 1 priority now that you've got Idrissa Gueye signed up. In fact, I think it probably drops down the list of priorities as a result. But I still think they need to do it. And yeah, for me, if 2 central midfielders came in, I'd be very happy with that.
I think I could sort of make me peace with it if they went after 1 and they got 1 in who was not necessarily elite, because we would do well to go and pluck an elite central midfielder out from somewhere on the continent or in the Premier League and bring them in, because it's just where we are. But I think if they go and sign someone, obviously the name that's been linked over the last 48 hours or so is Douglas Luiz, isn't it, from Juventus? And we don't necessarily know how much truth there is in those reports, but I think if you look at a player like him and you say, right, you get someone in like that who's been excellent in the Premier League for Champions League level sort of midfielder, would complement, I imagine, stylistically Idrissa quite well in terms of he's more of a ball player, isn't he? He's got a bit of bite in his game, but he's technically really good as well. He's a bit more of a sitter, doesn't get around the pitch quite as much. If you go and get someone like him, and then you say you've got Luis, Gana Gueye, James Garner, and then you've got Rabunum, and then Harrison Armstrong, are you 4th and 5th?
Alcaraz-ish.
Yeah, you sort of, I think you can just about get by then, really. But I think you need that. I think you need that 1 excellent player or 2 who are sort of at James Garner level, who can sort of jostle for that position with him throughout the course of the season, and Rabunum, because otherwise I think you're just leaving yourself pretty short. And I remember last summer when we signed Mangala, it was after Rabunum had started the season quite well. And a lot of people are looking at that thinking, why have we gone and got him? We've got, all these midfielders at the club already. And I just think it's that position where when you get into those like games, certainly around Christmas time and January, and let's not forget, Idrissa Gueye is going to potentially miss 7 games over the course of the season because of the Africa Cup of Nations. Like that's 7 Premier League games as well. That's not factoring in an FA Cup run or, God forbid, a League Cup run to the semi-finals. So they're going to have to countenance for that as well, aren't they? Because I think often we don't sign off midfield and you go into those games with James Garner and Tim Rabuna, and both of them have got the merits as players. But I think I feel comfortable, certainly those weeks and those days when it's back to back to back, to just be relying on those 2 relatively young footballers.
I'm going to get hammered by some people for this, but I think this is where you actually see the absence of Doucouré. Because in that scenario, you just plug him in and play as another central midfielder. Because of that versatility. He was never a proper conventional number 10, was he? He always, again, would always tell us he wanted to be a box-to-box rather than somebody further forward. And I just think in this scenario, if they'd had Doucouré as like that third option, actually I'd be feeling a lot better about the situation right now. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. And I still think actually there's quite a bit to do in there. But I do think we are seeing what losing his versatility does to the options there. They just start to look a bit more threadbare than they ever were. Yeah,
it's a really difficult one, isn't it? And like part of me doesn't agree in that sense, and but I also just think like they must be aware of this, and they must think. Obviously we don't know what Moyes makes of Armstrong yet, and how he's going to fit him into the setup, and I'm sure he'll learn loads more about him through pre-season, and maybe that's why they're sort of waiting. But I think we've all been getting to this point where it's like so happy that Gana's sticking around, so happy he signed a new contract, but that midfield area I think still definitely needs a lot of looking after. And yeah, obviously we'll see. It feels like there's going to be loads and loads over the course of the year. Loads of transfer rooms over the course of the next few weeks. Just very quickly before we move on, Paddy, obviously we haven't spoke since Jarrad Branthwaite's new deal was confirmed. Great news, seeing him stood in the new ground with the new shirt on, which I'm not a huge fan of, albeit I think that's the most I've liked it when I saw Jarrad posing for his new contract. To be fair, but like that's obviously boss, isn't it? And I think it's we sort of said the other week in regards to if he went this summer, the work he'd have to do, but it just sends all the right kind of messages out, doesn't it? Again, in the case of Idrissa Gueye, getting him tied down, just what you work with for the summer. Getting Branthwaite tied down, I think what your centre-back situation is. And I think probably from a transfer point of view as well, you kind of know what your budget's going to be, because it's hard to see Everton really selling any other first-team players this summer unless, I think, a massive offer comes in. So Moyes and his recruitment staff kind of know what they've got to work with for the whole summer now.
Yeah, you've got that template. You know exactly who's in now. There's no question marks over out of contract players. You've got the ones who are staying: Idrissa Gueye, Michael Keane, Jarrad Branthwaite, who wasn't out of contract this summer, but we know now he's on a longer term deal. I mean, the funny thing is, Matt, that in any ordinary summer, we'd be talking about James Tarkowski's contract being 12 months away from expiring. Massive part of the last few years for Everton. Vitaly Mykolenko, James Gana, although with the latter two, there are club options there, and you would expect them to trigger them if things continue to go the way they are. But this is what I mean about the window. It's like you can't pause, because there's always something else just a little bit down the line. So you tick Branthwaite off, then you've got to do Idrissa Gueye. Tick Idrissa Gueye off, and then we're into, does the midfield still need to be reinforced? Oh, actually, Everton don't have any right wingers. Now, if they had to play tomorrow, Dwight McNeil or Iliman Ndiaye probably play on that side, and I'm sure they'd be fine. But they're still crying out for options there. It still feels like there's an awful lot to do. So it's going to be such a busy summer. We keep saying this, but it has to be such a busy summer because of the amount of upheaval and churn. And I think in a sense, that's why they wanted some of these guys to stick around. So you had Idrissa Gueye sticking around, more surprisingly to some, Michael Keane, obviously. And I know there was a bit of a doubt as to whether he would sign for a while with the offer being on the table, interest from elsewhere, Everton looking at other options potentially in case he chose to go somewhere else. But Jared Branthwaite's probably the first sign that they are just going to go forward planning even more. And it's like they've not done Tarkowski, they've not done Mikolenko, they've not done James Garner's deals. Branthwaite's the big one to secure, and I think the big statement of intent so far in this window was interest, as has been reported, particularly from Tottenham, but also from Tottenham in January as well. As I wrote last week for The Athletic, he'll get a massive bump in his salary, so he'll be happy. And I think it makes it much harder for other clubs to come in and snare him, take him away from Everton's grasp. And like you say, you look at that central defensive area now next season, and it's Branthwaite, Tarkowski, albeit Tarkowski coming back from an injury. Jake O'Brien, who did well, and Michael Keane is your fourth choice option. You think, again, it's not perfect. You could improve on it slightly, but it doesn't require anything this summer, which is a massive win for them. And is it the only option on the pitch where you could really say that?
Well, like where they're boxed off, effectively.
Yeah.
Maybe left wing, if you say just McNeil and Alcaraz.
Yes. But, and also, so you got McNeil and Dye and Alcaraz, who in theory could play on that side if you wanted to. Left wing, maybe. Elsewhere, you need a backup left back. You're going to need, in my opinion, a starting right back. Unless you play Jake O'Brien there. But I think you'd probably erode your central defensive options if you did that. At least one, probably two right wingers. At least one, maybe two central midfielders. One of whom could play slightly behind the striker.
Barry comes in, like you look at that and say, well, you've got Beto, Barry, and Chimiti.
Yeah,
but effectively one position. Like obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Chimiti's future. Yeah, he could well go out on loan, but I almost feel like even like two centre forwards, like that's just kind of how most squads go now, isn't it? In regards to if you're playing one up front, it's typically just two centre forwards, and then maybe a lad from the academy you chuck on every now and then. So
well, Illiman and Dye would be Everton's third choice striker in that scenario. Not obviously if Chimiti was there, but it would be really interesting. Or Michael Keane, which I really would love right now to go over to Oklahoma City and see Rob Vera's reaction.
Yeah, I suppose like attacking midfield as well. Like again, we don't know where he's going to figure, but he could potentially be the backup to Alcaraz, couldn't he? Playing as the attacking midfielder. So yeah, like the centre backs just do sort of feel like it's boxed, but like you said, like that can very quickly change. Like if you're going into the start of the season and you've not signed a left back and Jared Branthwaite should emerge your left back cover, or you've not signed a right back and O'Brien's got to play there, then all of a sudden, like you can't spread them too thinly, can you? As much as it's good to have versatile footballers, like if they're playing out of position in another position, someone's got to be able to fill in for them. So yeah, still loads of work to do, but an encouraging start. Like I feel like in most other summers, like I've seen a lot of like angst around. Like if someone had said to me at the start of the summer, like Gana Gueye staying, Jared Branthwaite signing a new contract, you'll be close on a really exciting young striker. Alcaraz has come through the door. Like I'll be pretty relaxed with the situation. But I think when you're living through these early days of the transfer window and teams are starting to sign players and the rumour mill is in full churn, I think it's easier for people to get quite anxious about things, isn't it? But I think when you take a bit of a perspective look on it and look what they've done so far with all the change, I think it's to be commended, really.
Yeah, I mean, what they've done in terms of preserving what's in the squad is absolutely fine, and kind of A+ for getting Jared Branthwaite over the line too. Alcaraz, as we've said before, to me, a no-brainer to get that done for the price it was. Barry progressing well still at the time of recording, so that's another one in theory that looks like being an interesting piece of business. So let's see what comes next. You know what really hammered it all home to me was the club put out Monday lunchtime-ish a video of the first team squad in Scotland, as I reported it, Scotland. where they've gone for a early pre-season training camp. And there were just so many faces there that to people that aren't familiar with the under-21 setup, people are just like, who's that? Who's that? Who's that? And of course, you had some of the first team regulars around, but numbers pretty thin on the ground. And I guess if they were to play a game tomorrow, which they're not, it would be a very threadbare team and very threadbare squad. But I mean, by my count, you're up at somewhere between 7 and 10 under 21 players as part of that group, including, as I wrote earlier online, somebody like Braden Graham, who 17 years of age and was signed last summer for the under 18s. So that's where they are. That's where they are, and that's not to be alarmist, because we're still a long way to go to the start of the season, and even further still until the end of the window. But I think that first signing or two beyond Alcaraz, the proper permanent signing, will start to calm people down. And I suppose in ordinary circumstances, we may well have already had that if Kenny Tete had not changed his mind, and if Fulham had not come back in with a kind of an improved offer, that would have been a good piece of business. But that situation is what it is, and they're still looking for a right back. I don't know about you. I was relieved to see Kyle Walker end up in another part of northwest England earlier.
Yeah,
last week now. Last week.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about where he's at, doesn't it? Like I was sort of like worried, like if he'd gone somewhere like quite good and been all right, like maybe we were totally wrong about him there. And it's one of those where just because you don't look good for Man City doesn't mean you'd be, good for. Doesn't necessarily mean you would be good for Everton. But I mean, the fact that Burnley maybe where he's ended up has ultimately meant that I'm quite content that we've missed out on him there. You sort of hinted there at what we're going to talk about our second topic, which is obviously pre-season and the challenges of that. The players came back on Friday, and like you said, it's going to be dribs and drabs. I think I'm right in saying that Pickford and Gana have given a big extra bit of time off because of their international commitments at the end of the season. So I'm assuming we'll see them next week at some point.
Well, so that group would also include, if we're talking about England and Senegal players, for example. Yeah. So you've got those three there, a few of the internationals. You've also, as you mentioned earlier, Tarkowski's in a very different part of his rehab, where he's not. He is in with the team. He's in with the squad. He's traveling with them. He's doing running and doing. But when they go first few days of preseason and they report to Finch Farm and they have to go into the gym and do all the measurements and the testing. He's doing all that, but he's not certainly not in a position to play games right now or do full training. So there are quite a lot of players still to come back. You will have the new signings to bed in as well. The very obvious point to make, and we'll say this probably every summer we do the podcast, is that the sooner you get these players in, the better, particularly in Everton's case, given how much there is to do. You do have to start getting them bedded in and kind of up to speed with what you're doing. I think we'll see. I think things start to speed up in the transfer market over the coming week or so. But I still think, because of how much there is to do, towards the end of next month, August, they'll still be in the market looking for players. I don't think they'll have everybody signed. It'd be very hard for them to have everyone signed for that first game away at Leeds United at Ellen Road on a Monday evening.
Yeah, it's always going to be the way. I think the way they've done it, like, kind of is what I expected in regards to you get your main contracts done.
Yeah.
Obviously the Branthwaite one's different to a lot of the other players, but like just to have that clarity of doing right, these are the ones we've got now. Who's going to be here? Who's not going to be here? Are we going to have to sell anyone? Are we going to have to replace one? I think once you've sorted all that, it's just quite logical that the next step is the players that come in. So, like I said, I won't be surprised that if things did start to ramp up. But just in terms of the summer, it's obviously going to be quite different, isn't it, to the last few, in regards to not only what they're going to be doing on the training pitch, I imagine. And listen, like, compare Moyes and Dyche. Like, Dyche was obviously notorious for his hard running, his gappers days, the bleed tests and all that sort of stuff. I don't think Moyes is going to let them off the hook on the physical side of things, but I imagine there will be a few more, luxuries maybe isn't the right word, but it feels like Everton will be doing a bit more technical stuff in pre-season, and obviously they've got a trip to the States coming up as well, which is a far cry from the tours of Northwest England they did in the previous summers, and obviously the trip to Ireland as well. But I imagine for the lads that have been here for a while, in all seriousness, like that's going to make a nice, refreshing change, isn't it? And I think maybe if you look at Everton's record, certainly over the past 2 seasons, starting off campaigns when they've had to, sort of maybe penny pinch a little bit in the summer, and they've not been able to go, to on these big trips. They've not had the best facilities necessarily in the world, and they've not necessarily had those morale boosting, team building experiences. Maybe it's no surprise that in August we've stunk the gap out a lot in the last couple of years. So it's going to be a nice, refreshing change, I imagine, for a lot of lads in that squad who have been to Blackburn, Bolton, Preston, Wigan, wherever else for the last couple of years. Albeit they are still doing a bit of a Northwest tour, aren't they, as well?
Yeah, so they are. So they've got games against Accrington Stanley, which I think is the Tuesday the 15th, the evening of. Then they've got Blackburn Rovers away on the Saturday the 19th. So a few of those games mixed in. The obvious point to make about this summer's pre-season schedule is that I think it's much tougher than a lot of the other ones Everton have had recently. Obviously, another home friendly against Roma, this time at the new stadium. But then you've also, before that, you've got games against 3 Premier League clubs. So that feels like much better preparation, in theory, for what is to come, even in the heat and on some of the pitches that the US is churning out at the moment. I know there's been a lot of criticism of some of the Club World Cup facilities. The players will be happy with that. I mean, where we have to be careful with Dyche, and I know this from having been at some of the camps for a period, is he would completely beast them. He would. So at times they'd be doing. I remember being in Evian and in France by Lake Geneva in the Swiss border, and the weather there was like 35 degrees during the day, and he was having them doing 2 training sessions at a time. But he had a terrible August record. I mean, I remember when I asked Opta for the stats on it, I think I was told they had the worst record apart from Neil Warnock of any Premier League manager to take charge of more than 10 games. And I wonder if one of the things they used to say to me, Dyche and his staff, was that they would actually do a lot of fitness work early, and the shape and tactical stuff, and even the technical stuff, would come a lot later in pre-season. I don't think you'll have that with Moyes. I think there will be a fitness element, but he will, for sure, be looking to do a bit more ball work. I mean, I remember being out in Evian, and they were doing like white water rafting, and they had a team barbecue one night and stuff. So on every pre-season, managers are doing it. I think Dyche had a guy working on kind of your mental state as well, as part of the camp. So in some ways he was quite advanced, but I mean, this is a bigger staff that Moyes has got. There's a lot more individual coaching and tuition, if you want to call it that, and that's something that's really shone through with players like Beto in the second half of the season. And I would expect there to be a lot more individual work. I mean, that just reinforces the point. The sooner they can come in and get these new players can come in and get working with the coaching staff, the better in that regard. Nice little trip for them to the US. Moyes enjoys that. Moyes has spent a lot of the summer already in the US. And also, the other thing to probably say is that it's good to see Everton back in the States, given what we know about the strength of the support over there. It feels like with new American ownership, the new stadium, obviously very soon to be on the horizon and everything else. It's a great opportunity to try and take some of this momentum and see fans out there, try to grow the fan base a little bit more. It feels like the right time now, and maybe with a lot more positive energy, positive momentum around the club too.
Yeah, my one regret about Dyche leaving is that we never got to see Paddy Boylan's Gaffer's Day long read.
Oh, don't worry, it was definitely mentioned in our place as well. I don't think I think I'd have had to. I don't think they would have like put me through my paces, I would have almost had to ask them for give me a pass gaffer's day. Give me a pass gaffer's day, because it would change ever so slightly every year, I believe. But give me a pass gaffer's day and I'll try and do that. And I mean, depending on the heat, I'd have got somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes in before just not being able to do any more of it. I mean, the players did not enjoy that. They dreaded it. And I think that was a fitness thing, but it was also a mental test as well. It was how long can you keep going? And even to an extent, are you helping the lads around you if they're struggling as well? And you can imagine some of the squad lapping it up, but I don't think everyone, and certainly I wouldn't have been.
Yeah, I always think about that. I'm like, I reckon like Dyche guards the regime for Gaffer's Day like a cherished family recipe that no one else is allowed to see. And I was also thinking the other day, Paddy, and I think this was in pre-season, I'd love to know what was on the surveys that Dyche gave them that one year. Was that when he first came in, or was that in pre-season? He asked them all to do a survey.
No, that was when he first came in.
Oh, okay, right. I thought that was a pre-season thing. I wonder where the survey. Do you reckon it was like an online thing, or do you think they have to fill it out on paper? Just like hard copies of what they have to say about the teammates somewhere.
Do you know what? I don't know for sure. It would be funny if they'll have to kind of write them in pencil and just like they were doing kind of an exercise in a class in a school.
Player X, age 25.
trying to keep this anonymous while they're slagging off the teammates who've not been performing well in the first half of the season. I mean, he was into all that kind of stuff, obviously, and like one of the first things he did was he did the bleep test, and then he had players with the socks rolled up and shin pads, whatever else. Wouldn't like Tierno Barry much, because Tierno Barry plays with his socks down, so that would have been a big no-no in his book. Very different. What'd you say?
I was going to say the thing that he's forgetting there is to just like socks rolled down. Just looks cool, and like that's it. Ultimately, like it is cool to have your socks rolled down, and that is just one of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with it, but in Sean's book, that's not standard footballing attire, and therefore can't be used in games or in training. It'll be a very different pre-season in a whole load of ways. On a personal level, very, very excited to be out in Chicago, to be there to witness at least some of it as well. So it should be good fun, and I think that's where by that trip you want to see a few through the door, don't you? Minimum.
Oh yeah.
I know people are a little bit edgy now. Some people are a little bit edgy now as others do stuff and whatever else. But I think that's kind of the cutoff for me. You want some new players in that squad for the US.
Yeah, and you want to be able to sell as many Barry number 9 shirts as you can, don't you? Like from just like purely like commercial point of view, like that's if he's through the door and he's playing in those games, like that's you get him on everything, don't you? On everywhere, trying to get that shirt. So
I would. So yeah, if it was me, I would want, and obviously I'm not buying kits with names and numbers on the back now. But as a kid, I would have wanted him die.
Definitely, yeah. Like I remember saying, like I think on a show, like when things were going like pretty bad last summer, maybe if I started this actually, like there's nobody like taking myself back, like to like when I was in my early teenage years or even younger than that, like thinking about what player I would want on my shirt. Like I think I had Arteta when he first came in, although number six was should have always been number 10 or number 8 or something like that. But I had Arteta. I remember having Gary Speed when I was younger. I had Chelskis, and like we didn't really have any players like that, did we, for such a long time? We would like catch the imagination where when you were a kid, you're like, I want to be exactly like him. And obviously Ian Jai is very much that. And I think if you go out and spend big money on a new number 9, before anyone's even seen him play, there'll be people wanting to get them on the shirt. So
I reckon Alcaraz might be more popular than you think as well.
Yeah, what number was he when he first? What number was he last year?
Oh, this is like an extension of the squad numbers bit. I've got no idea without googling this.
I've got no idea either. But yeah, give him a good. There's a few good ones available. I think, as we've said before on recent podcasts, like 8's going, 9's going, 11's going.
Mikolenko seems to have taken 16.
Yeah, looks he's going to take 16, doesn't it, from Decore? So he was wearing it in the training gear today, wasn't he? But yeah, loads of good numbers there anyway. I'm sure people are fed up of us doing number chat. We'll save that for the end of the show. Just very quickly, Paddy, third topic this week is you got a VIP tour of the new stadium, Hill Dickinson. Was it just you? Was it selected members of the media, or did you just break in?
I don't know if I'd class it as a VIP tour, and I also need to be careful what I say, unless members of Merseyside police are listening and realise that I was actually trespassing on private land.
If you have trespassed, Everton should be thankful because you've shown up where the weak spot's in for burglars.
There you are.
To get in. So you've done them a favour, if anything.
No, I mean this was in the pipeline for a long time. It was just me having a look around to write a piece on how it's looking and state of play and everything else. Starts to feel more real every time I go. You see several new things, and even down to just like really small bits. Like the day I was in, they were putting it was last Tuesday. They were putting in the retractable tunnel, which got a lot of noise, to use a Daishism online. They were doing a lot of work in the tunnel. They'd put kind of numbers on entrances, all this like small stuff like accessibility signs for disabled people. And I just had a proper walk around, and I mean the pitch looks immaculate. And one of the things, like if you've done the Goodison tour, one of the things you'll notice when you go pitch side and do the Bramley Moor ones, which I think will start this summer, are just how flat the pitch is. There's no need for the Goodison Camber, which was like an envelope for drainage purposes. Here it's completely flat. And I guess like one of the things we got used to at Goodison was we'd see members of Everton's extended back room, even down to first team coaches, choosing our vantage point in the main stand press box because of how low down you are at Goodison. You almost kind of, if you're in the dugout, you're almost below pitch level. I know that sounds funny, but the players are almost above you, given how steep it is. Here, you'll have a perfect view. So maybe David Moyes doesn't need, or Charlie Adam doesn't need to go to the press box for those reasons. It looks great. It looks great. There's obviously work ongoing. As most people will know, the vast majority of the stuff to come now, it's kind of Evertonifying, for want of a better phrase, which is sorting fan murals and that kind of stuff. I think I put a picture up of one of 4 crests that's going on every corner. So 2 on East Stand as you walk into the site, and 2 on the West Stand. So there's some of that stuff still to go. Everton Way just about being completed. And then the rest of it is most of the manpower inside the stadium. Most of the workforce inside the stadium are working on the internal fit out of the corporate lounges to get those ready. So the press facilities, which are more spacious and a lot nicer than Goodison as well. So just looking forward to getting in there now, Matt, hopefully for that Roma game, all being well in, what is that, about a month's time now. Looking forward to getting in there and seeing it all and kind of experiencing the first proper game, I suppose, where it's full and you can hear what it's going to be like on a big match day.
Could be quite surreal if the first person you speak to in that new media room is Fabio Capello.
Yes, or Peter Reid.
Yeah,
Fabio.
It is
Fabio Peter Reid.
It is parachute kicks he had on when Angela Rayner rocked up in the
week. He took a lot of stick online for that, and I think that's a bit unfair. I think he looks quite cool, Peter Reid.
I don't know. I think if it's anyone else but Peter Reid, they're probably getting stick for it. I saw he had this little waistcoat number on as well, didn't he? But he photographed somewhere else.
I think that's quite cool, but it might just be his kind of general aura. That's just, it works for Peter Reid in a way that it wouldn't work for other people.
Yeah. I think Les could pull off stuff like that, can't he?
Les
could. In our circle of friends, yeah. But not many people can.
If I did it, I'd look like a complete wazzock. But if Les does it, Les will pull it off and would look cool. So, yeah. Maybe it's the same. Maybe it's this kind of aura that Peter Reid has. But yeah, Peter Reid and Fabio Capello. Hopefully some other names. Was it Candela from the Roma side, and is it Jagielka from the Everton?
Gotta get Totti, haven't they? Come on. I don't know what he's up to these days, but if you can lure him down there.
Who would you have from the Everton side?
Legends. They should just dust off the guest list from that Cult Heroes night that never happened and get all them back for it. There's Strack, Royston Drenfer.
Do you reckon, like somebody like Cahill would be good? I reckon Cahill would still be like really in decent shape as well to
do
it.
I've covered a couple of the like the Liverpool ones before just for work, and that's the main intrigue of doing them. It's like, is this person in shape or not? Like, obviously, they're still good at footy, but it's like you look at some of them and think, like, Liverpool played Chelsea in one this year, and like Makaleli and John Obi Mikel were in midfield, and they're like, bloody hell. They could still play at the exact same level. And then you see some other ones who I wouldn't name necessarily, and you think, God, they've been enjoying their retirement. So I think that sort of fascination side of it would be the main thing for me.
Yeah, no, that will be part of it for sure, and that's taking place, I think, after the friendly match between the two first teams, and there was a bit of debate as to which way round it would work, but what's been chosen is that it'll be on secondary, and I think that will work quite well because you'd hope that people would just stay if it's a nice day and watch the Legends match. And I mean, like, a massive coup even at this stage to get somebody like Fabio Capello involved, and you'll have some big names on the Everton side hopefully too as well. So it's the kind of thing I've wanted to see Everton do a bit more of, and I think the new stadium kind of opens up those possibilities a little bit more now, doesn't it? It means that you hopefully have a really, really good crowd in for that Roma game kind of this time next month.
I think the only thing I'd say about this, might be being ultra cynical, is that I am a bit worried that will give people maybe a bit of a false impression of what it's like getting away from the ground 2 weeks before the Brighton game, because I think people will filter away gradually, won't they, over the course of that? Like, I can't imagine people, like, everyone's going to stay for the entire game. I think some people will stay and just watch the main friendly. I think some will stay for a bit of the Legends game, some stay till half time, and others will stay for the whole thing. And I think that will mean that people just come away dribs and drabs, where when you've got that Brighton game, like, everyone's going to be leaving more or less at the same time. And I think, maybe not one for now, but I'm a little bit concerned about what that's going to be like coming out of that ground on that day, and how the infrastructure and public transport wise it's all going to hold up. But
you're talking about the Brighton game here rather than
Roma. Yeah. Like, again, it might just be being ultra, because I totally agree. Like, this sort of thing is great. They should be doing loads of it. Do one every summer, and not like a European team that's massive. Brilliant to see, but I don't know. Like, I think that's the one sort of looming thing with the stadium for me, is like, what's that first day at the final whistle going to look like outside? But listen, we will cross that bridge. No pun intended. We will cross that bridge when we come to it.
Literally, given the bridge down on the Regent Road.
I didn't want to be trite, Paddy, but you set me up for it there. But right, let's finish off with number 49. It's not a hugely inspiring one this week, Paddy. It is Jonas Lossell.
Okay.
Good distribution. I remember him being really good with his feet, but not necessarily a great goalkeeper.
Well, he just didn't really. Did he play at all for Everton? I've not got him down making it.
Those memories are from him at Huddersfield, because I don't think he ever played a game for us.
Thought he was always solid enough for Huddersfield without particularly standing out, and was obviously part of the goalkeeping group. I mean, the point to stress here is that there are members of a goalkeeping, what is usually a trio or quartet in Everton's case, who effectively are secondary coaches, in the sense that they're there to train with the number one and keep him on his toes day in, day out. And Lossell was very much that. He was very much somebody who was there to work with Pickford and whatever else. I interviewed him, actually. He's a really nice guy and spoke fondly about his time at Everton, but certainly not a memorable player in Everton's recent history. Another one that you kind of scratch your eyes and go, well, was he even here, given how little he featured? So yeah, these are 49 was a bit of a stretch, I think. We'll go through to 50 and see how we go.
Yeah. Do you think that's the best job in football, being a third choice goalkeeper?
It's a very good one, isn't it?
You get to kick around the training ground. There's not really any pressure on you. Maybe
would you rather not play? Would you rather not play than play?
I don't know. I feel like if you're at that point, you agreed to sign up for it, you kind of made peace with the fact you're not going to play. Yeah. And you're just going to be part of the squad. Like, probably no one, like if Jonas Lawson walked past me in the street, I would never recognise him. So, like, you're not going to get hassled day to day. You're going to make a good salary. I think it's a pretty good gig.
Would you call it like it's like the Carlo Nash or Scott Carson role, isn't it?
Mm.
And the guy Bettinelli,
yeah, he's gone to City, hasn't he?
Goes between. He was at Chelsea, he was at Fulham, he was at various other places. So there is
Andy Lonergan did it for a while, hasn't he?
Lonergan, Begovic. While we're talking about goalkeepers, I actually, if it had been up to me and I was deciding, let's be honest, this would have been a nightmare for Everton and would have probably resulted in relegation at the end of the season. But if it was up to me, I'd have probably kept Begovic and Virginia this summer, just as like we know the formula works. They're not going to cost a load of money, and it just means that there's one position less that you need to sort this summer. I would have had no problems with it with both or either of those two staying.
No, I totally agree. But I think Virginia was always like, he always looks quite good, doesn't he? So I get the sense he probably wants to go and play more frequently. But like, I hope he
does. I hope he does. But there was an extension. Obviously, there was a club option in his contract, so the club could have triggered it, and he'd have had to stay anyway, unless a bid came in for him. I'm led to believe. So, and Begovic was not retained, as he told me. Pretty short conversation where I was like, yeah, we're looking to bring fresh blood in this position. So the goalkeeping situation is Jordan Pickford, and then you have Harry Tyra, who has spent spells on loan at Chesterfield and Blackpool, and he'll be, for now, the backup. He's the number 2 next in line. And then 2 goalkeepers from the youth ranks.
George
Pickford, no relation to Jordan, who's played for England youth teams and is highly regarded. And Doug, I'm going to refer to him as Doug because he's got, I think it's a Latvian or Lithuanian surname. And I would absolutely butcher that. I don't think anybody needs that. But Doug is also part of the pre-season group, the 4 goalkeepers that have gone up to Scotland.
Oh, I feel a bit tight on Pickford. He's going to turn up at pre-season training. All of his mates have left. You know,
well, I think that camaraderie is important.
Yeah, having shot at himself just against the wall.
Get Carlo Nash and Bettinelli, and he'll be fine.
Yeah, Eldin Jakupovic, he was one as well, wasn't he? We had him for a bit.
Again, another one who's like, was he really even a real Everton player? But he was. He was.
Right.
You just reminded me.
Yeah, we could name backup goalies and third choice goalies never played for us all day. So let's wrap it up there. Yeah, if you've got any thoughts on anything we've spoken about today, do leave us a comment on YouTube or on Spotify or on iTunes. Do subscribe to our stuff so you get notified whenever there's a new podcast or video out. And as ever, we are sponsored by the Bridewell pub. It's going to be Heatwave in Liverpool this weekend. Get down there to that beer garden. It is a great place to have a bevy. I am holding up now the Goodison Park team sheet from the final day of last season. Right. Some interesting Southampton players on there for you to look at as well. So if you want to make us a nice bit of music to start our shows, we will send you that signed by Paddy or not.
No.
It can be your choice.
Nobody wants them. You can have the team sheet. What I'd say is it needs to be relatively good. That's my standard here. I want like a
relatively good, right? Okay.
I want like a 7 out of 10 minimum.
Okay, right, yeah. So if you're relatively good at music, do send that over to us at Everton Byline at gmail.com, and you could win a team sheet from the last ever men's game at Goodison Park. We'll be back again next week for episode 50. Cheers for tuning in. Up the Toffees. Speak to you soon.